Welcome back to the Relationships on Reddit podcast. I am your host, Alexander Grace. This podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and of course, YouTube. So wherever you're listening, whether you're driving somewhere, you're doing chores around the house, you're walking in nature, I just want to say welcome. As always, we go through 3 stories, and we've got some great ones today. The first story is a tough one. It's a man who finds out that his 3-year-old son was not his. He is the victim of paternity fraud and he's wondering what to do. Our second story is the story of a woman who was caught cheating and her friend at her workplace knows about it and now she has begun to bully that person. And the third story is a man who's offered to be part of a threesome from his best friend and his wife. So let's just jump into it. Our first story is, am I an asshole for leaving my 3-year-old son after finding out that he isn't mine and my wife cheated on me? I don't want to go into detail because I'm still not divorced legally. I am separated. A long story short, I found out that my child, or so I thought, was not actually mine. My wife cheated on me with her ex. I found out via messages. She had been cheating on me on and off throughout our marriage. I found out my wife also never loved me. She only married me because she was in her 30s and I was a responsible guy that would make a good father. After finding out, I was devastated. I have always wanted to be a family man and hearing this crushed me. I have met her ex in person before too, and finding out my son would grow up to look like him, well, that was too much. I decided to break things off completely with my ex. I don't want to raise another man's kid. I want to be able to start a new relationship and have children of my own. However, even my parents are saying that I'm in the wrong, that I should not turn my back on my son. I don't agree. It hurts, but I think that in 5 years, I would have made the right choice. Well, this is a relatively simple story, but it involves a very big ethical choice. So let's jump into it. This is the kind of thing that we very much need to talk about. Let's start with the wife. This wife who cheats on her partner, who never even loved that partner. She just wanted to find a responsible husband and father, someone who's going to raise her child. I want to condemn her in the strongest possible terms that I can. I mean, she had an affair that is absolutely terrible. She had a baby with her ex. I mean, that's even worse. And to top it all off, she lies to her partner and she's happy to have him raise this child. It's absolutely beyond the pale. I think that this woman must have some kind of mental disorder, some personality disorder. Like there's something not right with this person. She has committed one of the most unethical things that you can do. She wanted some responsible man to raise her children. She's in her 30s. I mean, we talk quite often on my YouTube channel and hopefully in this podcast about a certain type of woman, a low quality woman, who is manipulative and exploitative and feels completely justified in taking a man's resources. This woman fits the description perfectly. She is like the poster child for the kind of woman that you need to avoid. So men, pay attention. You need to be aware that there are women like this out there. She's the kind of girl who spent her 20s sleeping around, having a good time, living that party lifestyle. She didn't spend her time working on herself, preserving her chastity. Instead, she's just been racking up debt, probably not developing any kind of skills or a career because, well, why would she work on herself? What's the motivation? She knows that by the time that she's in her 30s, she can just marry a nice guy like the poster of this post and he's going to take care of everything. That was her plan. If you want to find out, so why haven't you spent your 20s developing yourself, developing a kind of career? You ask women like this that question, they won't tell you the answer. But if you put it to them directly, so do you think that you'll get married? Would you like to marry a rich guy? They'll all be like, oh yeah, that is the plan. And so that's how you spot a woman like this. Look out for a woman who's over 30. She's got stories of lots of ex-partners who treated her really badly. No skills, lots of debt, and this one's important, and this is the one that often hoodwinks men. She is suspiciously into you. She seems really keen. She's talking you up, she's sweetening you up. She wants to spend all her time with you. She wants to commit really, really quickly. Now, if you're a great guy, it can be easy to fall into this trap because you're thinking, oh, finally, there's this woman who's treating me with the kind of love, respect, and adoration that I've always deserved. This has got to be the real thing. And I wish that was true, but you have to be cautious. If a woman is really, really into you, there is the possibility that she is looking to manipulate you or exploit you. So hold off, try and be a little bit more cautious. Don't just jump too deep into the relationship. You need to find out what her true motives are. And I wish that this guy had done this, because evidently this is not the kind of woman you could trust, as evidenced by her later actions. So yeah, he fell for it, This girl managed to get her claws into him, but don't blame this man for falling for this. He's certainly not the first person to get fooled like this. The blame belongs with the woman. She took advantage of him and his good nature. She exploited him and he wasn't even aware of it. So the blame lies with her. But men, if you're listening to this, that means that you have heard the warning that I've just given, that there are women out there like this who are out to exploit men in this way. So you have no excuse for falling into the same trap. This is your warning. You need to be wary of these women. They exist, and they're toxic, and they're going to ruin your lives. So consider yourself warned. Now, let's talk about the ethics of this situation. All right, first things first, he needs to break up with her. Of course, that is absolutely non-negotiable. He couldn't possibly stay with this woman, so I agree with that. I know that there will be some people who will try and make the argument that, it's better for the children if mum and dad are together. And of course that is true, but it's not an absolute truth. It's generally true, but really, if the relationship is toxic, which this relationship would be, and there's no chance of it improving, then you don't really want to raise children in that kind of toxic household. It is better to split up. It's better for the children. And I mean, what would he stay for? He absolutely owes her nothing. Whatever obligation there was, his marriage vows or whatever it is that he did, the time they spent together, her expectations for some kind of stability, whatever obligation there was, her actions have completely voided it. He does not owe her a thing anymore. And it really sucks that he has to go through the divorce process. Because what, are they going to split all their assets? Now, I'm not an expert on divorce. I've never been divorced. I don't plan on ever getting married or divorced or anything like that. But I do hear that there's this no-fault divorce thing, and I wish I knew more about it. But people in the comment section are often telling me about it, and it gets confusing because I think it's different in the United States as it is here in Australia. But from what I can understand, generally, that you can't apportion the assets based on whose fault it was that the marriage broke up. That's what no-fault divorce is. And again, I don't know all the technical details, but just from a common sense point of view, that's ridiculous because this divorce is completely her fault. She's the reason that the marriage isn't going to go out. So if they split their assets, 50-50, that is a perversion of justice. Sure, any assets that they have jointly accumulated, I guess she can have some kind of, claim to that. But if he brought a whole bunch of extra assets to the marriage beforehand because he is a responsible guy who probably didn't spend his 20s racking up debt and not developing skills, then he should get to keep these. It's her fault that the marriage doesn't continue, so why should she have any claim to that stuff? I mean, at the very least, I don't know, maybe she should have to pay all the legal fees associated with the divorce. She's created this situation. So there's that. I mean, but let's get right down to the real point here is what obligation does he have to the child? I think we all agree, hopefully everybody listening to this is like, yes, this woman's a disaster, get out of there as quickly as you can. But there is a 3-year-old boy here, and the child is innocent. The child is absolutely blameless in all of this. And I think that there will be some people listening who think that he does have an obligation to remain, or at least to stay in the child's life. I don't actually share that point of view. I think that he's free to leave, that morally he doesn't necessarily have to stay. I understand that there are lots of men who would want to stay in the child's life, and I can completely understand that. I don't really know what I would do in that situation. If he did want to stay, I think that he absolutely has the right to stay, and he has a right to be in this child's life. So he could hope for some kind of joint custody arrangement if that's what he wanted. I think that he'd have every right to ask for that. Or it could even be something a little bit more casual than that. Whatever they figure out, I think that it should be up to him. It's appropriate for him to decide how much he wants to be in the child's life. And if that's what he wants, good for them. But if he wants to bail out completely, which he does, and not spend any time with this child and end his obligations, I think that that's also completely understandable. And it's not appropriate to judge this man just because he wants out entirely. He wants to get out. Yes, the child is blameless. Yes, the child is innocent, but so is the man. And you can't answer one miscarriage of justice with another. Two wrongs aren't going to fix this situation. He has been through something absolutely rotten. I mean, how painful must this all be for him, the way that he's been taken advantage of. And so what does he want? He wants what I think most people would want. He wants to start a new life, free from this woman, free from these lies. He wants a new partner, new children. He wants that blank slate. And there's no really other way to put it. This other child is a complication. I know that there's a discussion to be had about whether or not he can stay in this other child's life, and I don't mind talking about it. But the moment that somebody became judgmental of him, I think that you're missing the point completely. This guy is the victim in this situation, and so he is entitled to proceed in any way that he wants. As regard to the 3-year-old boy, well, I will grieve for him. I feel compassion and sympathy for him. I absolutely do. I think that it sucks that he was lied to about who his father was, and that he is the offspring of such a horrible woman. I can't imagine that his life is going to turn out particularly well being raised by somebody of such low moral character. But my sympathy for this child does not extend to forcing this man to do anything with regards to him, and certainly doesn't make me want to shame the man for wanting to leave him. I think that this man, he has the right to pursue happiness. And let's not forget that this boy does have a father. It's not like he's fatherless. This ex is the father, and so it's the father's obligation now. He also has a mother, he has parents. So whatever suffering the child is going to endure based on the breaking up of this family unit, don't place the blame on this man. Even if he leaves forever, 100% of the responsibility for this child and 100% of the blame, that goes on the parents. And so I really feel for him because he's got his parents telling him that he's in the wrong and that he needs to stay for the sake of this child. These are not easy conversations to have. And I can understand where the grandparents are coming from because they've lost a grandchild. They've lost a daughter-in-law. Hopefully they understand that that's no great loss. But they've lost a grandchild. That's brutal. So I can understand that they're upset, but that upset, whatever they're going through, should not extend to them telling their son that he needs to stay in this child's life. They need to be empathizing with their son at the moment. They need to be rallying around him and giving him all the support that he needs. So I think that their actions in this instance are inappropriate. They should have been putting their son's needs first. And what he needs to do is to remove himself from this painful situation. He's invested however many years in this marriage, 3 years raising a child that isn't his. It's horrible and it's going to hurt for a long time, but he shouldn't have to pay for this woman's lies for the rest of his life. He does have a chance at a clean slate. He's a man. He can have children long into his 30s, 40s, and 50s if he wants. And so when you have that opportunity to actually have the life that you want, just because you fell victim to a terrible woman in the first instance, I don't think that should preclude you from chasing your dreams and trying to be happy. So when he says that his focus is on 5 years in the future, that he thinks that he's going to look back on this decision and feel vindicated, like this was the right thing to do, I agree with him. I think that he's got his head screwed on right, and this is the rational approach. Everybody is in a lot of pain and suffering and confusion right now, because right now is where it's raw, but in time, things will fade. He'll think back on this time with this son with fondness, but he'll move on because he'll have his own children. So to extend it, to prolong it, to go into joint custody and try and figure this all out, I don't think that that's the right approach. I think he's got the right idea. It's better to just rip off the Band-Aid straight away. So Of course, my compassion goes out to this man, but I think that you're approaching it in exactly the right way. But this is a very difficult moral situation. It's just so horrible that this woman even put him in this situation where he needs to make these decisions. But that is the way of things. I'll be very curious to see what other people thought about this story. So, typically what I do in this podcast is after I read a story, I read out some of the comments to see what other people thought. So, let's go ahead and do that. First comment. Cool. So the poor kid gets to be the one who suffers because the original poster's pride is more important. Yep. So, I mean, there it is. There's somebody shaming the man as if it's his fault that the child is suffering. You know, I'd go fuck yourself, honestly. Like, how dare you get on your high horse and judge this person? You know, I think that this kind of mindset, it comes from somebody who doesn't understand the pain that it would be as a man in this situation. Like, it's his pride that he's protecting, as if this is some kind of egotistical, power trip that he's going through. Like, oh, I don't want to raise another person's child because I'm too good for that. It's like, no, you are the victim of lies, manipulations, exploits. Every time you look at this child, you're going to be seeing your wife's infidelity. It's too much to ask for a person, Why is this comment not shaming the parents in this situation? I don't agree at all, and I think shame on you for attempting to judge this poor man. All right, next comment. It horrifies me that any man who raises a child for years believing that they are the father and presumably loving that child can all of a sudden just turn that love off. All right, so look, it seems like I might be in the minority. It seems like most people think that this guy needs to stay with the child. I don't think that he's just turning that love off. I just think that it's complicated, Can we not understand that there is nuance to this situation? He feels probably tremendous love for this child, but he also feels incredibly betrayed, a lot of hurt, and from a practical point of view, raising a child is a big deal that would potentially prevent him from being able to express love to his future children. So, look, again, it's just another way of shaming him, isn't it? Saying that if he wants to leave this marriage and to start over with children of his own, that must automatically implies that he can just turn his love off. So what kind of inhuman monster creature of a man can he be for just turning that love off? I think that completely misses the point. I think that it's just another shaming tactic. Yep, don't agree. I think shame on you for writing that comment. Let's see if somebody agrees with me. Let's look at the next comment. Once you realize that you'll never look at the child the same way again, you'll look at it and you'll see him, the other man. You'll know that you were strung along by a girl who didn't love you and that the child is the product of the girl who loved cheating on you. That the girl you loved cheating on you. It hurts. 0 out of 10 would not recommend, but you won't ever feel this way until it happens, and I hope you don't ever have to experience it. Well, I agree with this comment. I think that there's a pain that comes from what he's going through, that to ignore that pain as if it's not a relevant part of the data that you need to consider when choosing what direction to go from here is just ridiculous. Yep, I agree with that comment. It is wholly irresponsible to blame the man for walking away. This whole scenario occurred because the mother committed fraud. She alone should bear the consequences of these actions, and the resulting trauma to the child should be her problem to manage. The man leaving just had his life ruined and may need years of extensive therapy to right his mind after this, let alone to trust anyone ever again. What she did should be a crime. All right, okay, so, yep, more people are agreeing with my perspective. It probably splits 50-50, this one, and I can imagine that it might even split pretty much along gender lines, because men would understand the pain that he's going through, and I think that women's thoughts would mostly be with the child. And of course, I think both people's interests need to be taken into account, but I would guess that this comment was written by a man. What she did should be a crime, he wrote. That's an interesting thought. I don't think there are any societies, at least Western societies, that have things like infidelity or paternity fraud as a crime. Probably because, with paternity fraud, what are you going to do? You're going to charge the mother and put her in jail? Well, then who's going to raise the child? That's not good. Oh, well, I don't know, maybe it's good that the child's taken away from such a horrible person and given to somebody who maybe can do the job better. But it is an interesting thought. There are no consequences for paternity fraud as far as I know, Which is a very, very strange thing now that I think about it. Like, we have crimes and punishments for all kinds of other frauds. You know, if you defraud somebody of their money, that's a crime. But if you defraud somebody of years of their life, which is arguably way worse, you lie to them and convince them to invest their resources into raising a child that's not yours, what consequence is there for that? Should it be a crime? I don't know. Look, at the very least, there should be a lot more social shame around this kind of behavior. I mean, it's just extraordinary that somebody could do this. I hope that there are consequences for her. Oh, this is really interesting, hearing what other people think. Like I said, it's a simple story, but it really raises some important ethical questions. Let's read more. What happens in 3 years when the biological dad comes back and wants to be dad? Where does that leave the original poster? And the child? What a mess she made. Yeah, exactly. Really good point. So let's say that he did want to stay in the child's life, or he goes for joint custody. Who's to say that the original father doesn't just come in at some point and just make a huge mess and just say, no, you're not the real dad. Doesn't matter that you've invested all this time into my child, all this money and attention, love and care. I'm the biological father, so I now demand it, and I pushed you out. You know, there's just far too many complicating factors for him to even go down that road. It's like what he said. This is a huge mess, but she made it. I think you just need to wipe your hands clean of the whole thing. All right, let's just read one more comment, then we'll move on. There is research around this, and having two parents is best, but you are better off with one parent than having two parents that hate each other / have an unhappy marriage. It just leaves them with fucked up ideas on how relationships should be because their parents had a bad one. Interesting. I would be interested in seeing that research. What they're saying is that actually, if you are genuinely unhappy, the whole "it's better if parents stay together" argument falls down, because if you have an unhappy marriage, it's better to split up. I guess, I would think that would only be true if the two people were genuinely happy when they were single or in new partnerships. And typically, I think that if you can't make it work with one person, you're probably going to have difficulty making it work with another person, but that's not always the case. So, yeah. That's interesting, but let's leave that story. Let's move on to the next one. But before we get to that, I just want to mention that this podcast is sponsored by Man-Made Media. This is where you can take simple animations and then use them to illustrate the results of scientific studies. They go through the background, the methods, the results, the conclusions. And so if you want to make sure that your understanding of gender dynamics, of relationships and sexuality is not just opinion, that it's actually based on the fact and the latest research, check out Man-Made Media. The videos are only $5. You can click on a link in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. Or if you're listening to the audio, just type into Google man-made-media.myshopify.com. Any purchase that you make really goes to help the podcast, so that would be fantastic. There are also other ways that you can support the podcast, like if you subscribe on iTunes, if you leave the podcast a positive review on iTunes, if you just upvote it on YouTube, if you share it with people, that's also really great, expands the audience. I think that this podcast is really cool because we're talking things largely from a male point of view, but I know that I do have female listeners and female viewers, and I think that they can appreciate that even though it's unapologetically, like, from the man's perspective, there's nothing extreme here. So maybe if you're interested in talking about these kinds of ideas and these perspectives with the women in your life, sharing this podcast with them, say, hey, what do you think of what this guy's perspective is? That might be an interesting way to start the conversation. And of course, the more audience that comes along and listens, the better it is for the podcast. So, awesome. Let's move on to the next story. It's called Making a Snide Comment About a Co-worker Who Cheated on Her Fiancé. I work a busy job full-time at a popular food chain. I've been there about 9 months, and despite the stress it's given me, I love it a lot. However, there's one person I can't figure out. When we first met at the job, she was so friendly. She drew cute things on my food boxes at lunch and complimented me, wanted to hang out, we'd hug a lot. If someone was rude to me, she'd instantly be on them to tell them to stop. We even got the same small tattoo on a whim a couple of months ago. Yet, she's stubborn and mean. It's never been aimed at me until about 6 to 8 weeks ago when she cheated on her fiancé with someone else that we work with. Her fiancé found out and messaged me about it, along with screenshots of their sexting / flirting. Ooh. She immediately panicked that I'd stopped being her friend, and because the wedding had only been a week and a half away, it led to a lot of tension at work. I told her that I didn't hate her because it wasn't my place. If her fiancé could forgive her, in brackets, which he has, they're now married, so could I, but it's a sore subject for her. Lately, she's been horrible to me, calling me ugly, useless, stupid, making fun of me for being really loud and annoying because I'm really young, in brackets, she's 3 years older than me, poking me at my sides, in brackets, which everyone at work knows I hate. I don't tell them why, but it's linked to a past trauma that makes me absolutely freak out when my waist is touched. Goodness. This coincides with her becoming a shift runner at work a month ago, which has given her a bit of a power trip. I took her aside one day and said, "Seriously, coworker, this is really upsetting me. I'm trying harder to get better, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd stop being so negative towards me." And she said, okay, and that was that, until like an hour later. She poked me, called me horrible things, said, "I don't know why I'm enjoying being so mean to you lately." And I said, "I've asked you to stop multiple times." And she said, "Just because you've asked doesn't mean I'm going to." The last straw was today. I'd been at work an hour or so, and she'd been at it again. Then I jokingly pushed the guy she cheated with to move out of my way because I was trying to sort stuff out, and she yells, "Don't you fucking push him." So I say, "Why are you like this to me? Don't you like me or something?" She says, "I do, I just like the guy more." Without thinking, I bitterly snapped, "Well, that's what nearly ended your marriage." Her face dropped and she angrily said, "Seriously, shut the fuck up right now. This isn't any of your business." She ignored me all night. If looks could kill, I'd have died instantly. I felt awful all night, and my instinct was to pull her over and apologize, but I feel just as upset. However, I accept what I said was wrong. I just need some help working out how wrong, given the context. Ooh. No. Oh, this guy's lost. All right. This woman is horrible. This must be the podcast for horrible women, this episode. I don't like anything that I've heard about this woman at all. You're stuck. This is what sucks about the workplace. Because in the workplace, you are forced to interact with people that you would never be friends with in your regular life. In your real life, you only encounter people who you consciously choose to, who you seek out because those people are going to be friends. But you actually spend like 500 more times with the people that you work with than even your closest friends. Like, those are the people you see almost every single day. You didn't choose those people. You're just sort of stuck with them. And when they're horrible people like this woman, it just makes your life miserable. It's actually one of the biggest motivators I think that you should have to become an entrepreneur, to become your own boss. It's so that you can escape this cycle of random interactions that are forced upon you. Because when you're working for somebody else, you are subject to the whims of random people, and you're forced to interact with people that you don't like this woman. She's the kind of coworker or even boss in this instance that you can kind of be stuck with. I mean, she is a walking, talking advertisement for entrepreneur school. Like, if this story and this woman doesn't make you want to start your own company, nothing will. So how did this all go wrong? Look, I think that this guy, he probably had a crush on this girl. That's what it sounds like to me, reading between the lines. So he obviously has a terrible taste in women. But that's not really relevant to this story. He sounds shy. He sounds nervous. He's obviously been through some trauma. It sounds like it's probably sexual trauma. My compassion goes out for him. He's not a man who's coping particularly well. He probably feels like he's in need of protection. And so when this woman, to begin with in their friendship, she was like the strong woman, a mother type, and she was stopping the bullies and standing up for him. And that would have been very, very attractive. So, I can understand how he became friends with this woman, even though I don't approve. If you're vulnerable enough, somebody like this can appear kind of charming and interesting and safe in a way. But look, regardless, she shows her true colors. She cheats on her fiance up until a week and a half before the wedding. What a fucking disaster. Oh my goodness. I mean, this poor husband, what the hell is he thinking? He knows that she cheated on him. He's not even be fooled. He found out. He saw the way that they were talking with each other, with sexting and flirting. I mean, could anything break your heart into 1,000 pieces more than actually seeing the woman that you loved, that you thought that you were going to spend your life with, doing sexting with another man? It would crush you. Well, I mean, it should crush you. And so to get married, to actually go through with it, imagine standing in front of all of your friends, all of your relatives, in front of your parents, and looking this woman in the eye across from you and saying vows and getting married to them, knowing what they were doing behind your back, knowing they were getting screwed by some other fella, running through your head during the marriage, all of the sex that you witnessed, that you saw. How did he do that? And this husband is obviously a totally lost person, completely out of touch with himself. How you could go through with a wedding in those circumstances is just the saddest thing to contemplate. I imagine that he will have rationalized it. And you do see this every now and then. It's almost like our culture, not with everybody, but we kind of elevate forgiveness as if it's this really amazing virtue that everybody should aspire to. But really, there's nothing impressive about forgiving her in this context. That didn't require any virtue on his part. It required no courage, no intelligence. It's just an expression of cowardice, really. I think that he must be scared to be alone, scared that he's not able to attract somebody better, and so he just went through with it. There's nothing impressive about that. I think that the husband in this situation deserves compassion, but really, with regards to his decision, he deserves contempt. He should not have gone through with this under any circumstances. I cannot imagine justifying it from any angle. And I mean, this story is not about the husband, even though there's a lot to explore there. It's about this friend, and he has to work with this girl. So, I mean, this friend, what did he do in the aftermath of finding out that she was cheating? He said that it wasn't his place to judge her. Well, what kind of rationalization is that? The husband's obviously friends with you, He's talking to you about it. He's sending you the evidence. He's sharing the texts. If you're a friend to the husband, you should absolutely have been telling him to move on. You should say, dude, this woman's no good for you. Look, here's the evidence. You've got to get away. Do not go through with your wedding. I know that feels like you're putting yourself in the middle, but when you're the friends with somebody, you owe them that truth. This is too important to stay silent over. The stakes are too high. You absolutely need to tell him. And if he says no, that's his business. But I think at that point you need to walk away. You can't be friends with somebody who's making such terrible decisions. And if he's asking you to be complicit in it, he's like, oh, don't you think that I should stay with this woman? Keep being my friend, even though I'm making this terrible choice and getting married. At that point, he's really, really off the deep end. He's asking you to be complicit in his bad decision. He's explicitly asking you to be codependent with his terrible choices. And you should absolutely not do that. You do not want to lend your credibility to his delusions. If you stay friends with him after he does this, then in effect you are supporting his bad decision. And that's when you become culpable. Not completely, but a small fraction of the responsibility and the blame for what happens now lies with you because you supported him in this terrible, terrible choice. So ethically, it's the complete wrong thing to do. You need to tell him to leave this woman, and if he doesn't, you need to separate yourself, Let him know that you condemn his choice. And just on a practical level, you would save yourself from so much drama because there is so much drama incoming. There's no way that this has resolved itself. This story and this marriage does not end with a happy ending. It's going to end with heartbreak, tears, fights, lawyers. Guaranteed, not a doubt in my mind, because this woman is obviously not emotionally mature enough to have a proper relationship. And so protect yourself, when you see this kind of potential for drama, stay away from these types of people. They're going to make your life miserable. All right, let's talk about the woman. Let's leave the husband for a little while. Let's talk about her psychology. I think that when you guys were hanging out when you first started at the job, she probably got a bit of a power thrill leading you around, like a big sister kind of thing. She liked that you were a little bit spineless and just did what she told you. But that doesn't mean there was any genuine friendship there. She was just using you. She liked the kind of power trip. There's no genuine love. She may have even been aware that you had maybe like a bit of a crush on her, and she just kept you around as an orbiter. And so I don't think that you need to mourn any genuine affection that's been lost. I don't think that it was there to begin with. The attention that she had for you was completely self-serving. And so, why has she turned on you now? Well, there's no mystery there. She knows that you know that she cheated on her husband. So you're now a breathing reminder of what she did. When she looks at you, she sees her infidelity. You are the reminder, and she does not want to be reminded of that. And she obviously has a very simple, unsophisticated mind, because the way that she reacts is so primitive. She feels uncomfortable around you because of her conscience and because of this reminder that you give her. And her reaction to feeling that discomfort is she just gives in to her instinct to lash out, to be mean to you, to use her power, as the shift runner over you. It actually, at that point, with somebody with such an unevolved, sense of self and ethics, it doesn't matter that you've never judged her. You'd think the fact that you didn't condemn or criticize her would save you from this kind of treatment, but you're giving her too much credit. A woman this simple doesn't even think that way. You never judged her, even though you should have, but what's happening is all of her unspoken negative thoughts about herself, she imagines you speaking them to her. She imagines you thinking them inside your head. And that's enough for her to be mean to you. She may even be being cruel just to provoke you to say them, because she doesn't like the idea that you're just thinking them. She wants to get them out in the air. And I don't understand. I mean, I can understand if you've been through trauma and you're just really not coping with life and you just hate the idea of ever starting a conflict. I can understand why you dislike this situation, but in no way should you feel bad or guilty about the way that you've responded. You did absolutely nothing wrong. She acted first. She was being cruel relentlessly. You even did the mature thing, which I think took bravery for somebody with your kind of constitution, to take her aside and to be very honest and vulnerable and ask her to stop politely. You did everything right. But she continued. And so when you came back at her in the way that you did, you were speaking defensively. You didn't attack her. You just were saying something to shock her enough to freak her out so that she would stop. And you don't owe her anything. You don't owe her kindness or politeness. She's waived her rights to those things by her actions, first in the cheating, and then in the way that she's been treating you. She's a vicious bully. You don't need to be nice to somebody like that, And so maybe you're feeling uncomfortable because, she's giving you the silent treatment and these horrible looks that make you, feel like you're going to die. But really, the silence is better than the teasing and the cruelty and the bullying that was going on. I think it's really good what you did. I applauded it. When I read the story, I was like, yes, that's exactly right. She has to know that there are consequences to her actions, and that if she's going to be mean to you, you will fight back. If she's going to say horrible critical comments to you, well, you can say horrible critical comments back to her. And since you're a nice guy, there's only so much she can say about you, but she's a terrible person, so you're swimming in material. You know something really horrible about her, and that's something that she does not want to be reminded about. That's a power that you have. That's a power you have in this dynamic. So I would recommend speak loud and speak often until she gets the message, until she knows, I can't mess with this guy. What you're going through is absolutely workplace harassment and bullying. It doesn't matter that you're former friends, and it certainly doesn't matter that you're a man and that she's a woman. This is harassment. This is bullying. I mean, what about this? She's poking you in the ribs. All of this non-consensual contact that you find traumatic. You asked her to stop, and she continues to do it. Just imagine if the genders were reversed. If there's some male out there touching women on their waists and poking them, even though they've asked him to stop. Can you imagine the outrage and the uproar? And for a woman, this, calculating, she's completely aware of her power in this situation, that you can't do much to stop it. She knows that you're not in a situation to discipline her. She is consciously using her female privilege to get away with this, and it's completely outrageous. So, obviously what I think you should do is you should need to tell your boss. You need to file a formal complaint, because, in addition to the possibility of that actually resolving it for you, and that's impossible for me to say, I don't know how good your workplace handles things like this, but it's really important that you just get it on the record, because how else can you deal with this? You can't touch her back. You can't poke her to give her a taste of her own medicine because of her female privilege. You'll get raked over the coals and absolutely torn to pieces because you're a man. So you can't do that. You can't physically defend yourself because it will seem like aggressive. And, if you did in a moment of weakness, poke her back in a way to try and get her to stop, I don't trust that she wouldn't make a huge deal about it. And even if you do nothing, even if you just stay silent and you just decide, I'm just going to put up with this, do not trust that a woman like this won't make up lies about you. I think that she's already proven herself to be a liar and a woman without ethics. What was to stop her from coming up with complete fabrications about your behavior and using those lies to try and make your life a living hell? She is antagonistic towards your interests. So you need to be smart. You need to take steps right now to protect yourself. She might start to discriminate against you as in her role as the shift runner. That's just a simple thing. But if you get something on record, if you go through all the proper channels, then if something does go down, if something horrible happens, you can point back to it and say, I already filed a complaint about this. I have proven that I took the correct steps. That's what you're doing. You need to cover your own butt, because it won't be enough if something really horrible happens. It won't be enough to just say, but she's been doing this for months. And then someone will be like, well, what proof of that is there? It's like, this is the point of doing a formal complaint, to get something on the record. You need to take this seriously. You need to be very wary around a woman like this. And do everything by the book. There's nothing wrong with what you did. Like, I think the way that you came back at her, inside, I am cheering for you. I think that that's a victory. And look, maybe that's enough to stop this behavior, but I doubt it. I think a woman like this is vindictive, and I think that she's probably planning her revenge. She's ruminating on it right now, thinking of ways to get back at you. So celebrate your victory. It sucks that you don't feel triumphant. I feel the triumph, but you don't. You feel guilty. I mean, what's that about? I don't know what beliefs you have about yourself. Maybe it's like low self-esteem or something like that. I don't know what would manifest you feeling this guilt, but I really hope that you're able to change it. Do some introspection, go to therapy, find out what it is that's making you feel guilty at a time when you should feel proud of yourself, because you should feel awesome. You just put a bully in her place. There's so many people who wish that they'd done that when they were in school, when they were a small child. They wish they'd stood up to their bully. You got to actually do it. Congratulations, it's a shame you don't feel good about yourself, but it is what it is. Let's have a look at some of the comments. Let's see what people thought about this situation. This should be interesting. First comment, she can dish it out, but not take it. All right, yeah, absolutely. Short and simple, but that gets the point across. That sort of seems to be the way with bullies. They, as soon as they take a tiny bit of their own medicine, they go running for the hills. So yeah, it's great. You dished it out back, and look how she just completely melted. You've been taking it for weeks. Just taking it in your stride, just putting up with it. The very first thing that she hears that's unpleasant or makes her uncomfortable, and she completely melts down. Oh, it really speaks volumes. Next comment. I'm surprised the fiancé/now husband, I guess, is okay with her continuing to work with the guy, let alone go through the wedding. Yeah, that's right. She cheated on her husband with somebody else at the work, and they still work together? What on earth is wrong with the husband that he's okay with this? how is this come about? This woman must have her husband wrapped around her little finger. Oh, it's very sad. It's very sad. God, life is precious. You I don't know if there's an afterlife. I don't know how many chances you're going to get to have a good relationship, but my God, it's important to not waste your time with terrible people. It may be the most important thing. If you find a woman like this, do not waste more than a second on her. Certainly do not marry her. Life is too short. Find somebody who's nice. Oof. Alright, this story's getting depressing. I'll read one more comment. Her behavior is classic mean girl shit. Being super sweet and nice, but is able to flip a switch and become a shit person. Going from let's get matching tattoos to I love being mean to you is toxic narcissistic behavior. She's not your friend, original poster. She never was. Yeah, that's my reader on it as well. This is not something where they had a genuine friendship that just happened to go bad. I think that it was always about power, and in the first instance, she felt powerful by being the one in control of the friendship and sort of leading you around, but now she's equally happy to exert her power over you in a negative way. I think that's all that's going on. I hope that he was able to read these comments in the Reddit section and do some of that necessary introspection so he can actually start moving in a more positive direction, because I think finding yourself in friendships with people like this and not helping the husband when he's clearly the one that needs help, it's a little bit dark to even contemplate the internal world of a life that confused. And that's what the internet is great for. Things like Reddit and this podcast. People who are confused about life can come on and learn from other people, learn from each other. That's what we should all be doing. I really like this podcast. I really hope you guys are getting a lot out of it. If you are loving it, let me just plug my Patreon. It would mean so much to me to have your support. I know we're all used to getting things for free on the internet. I know that I certainly am. But this podcast and, of course, my YouTube channel, a lot of work goes into it. I work on it every single day. So if this is helpful, if it's interesting, if it's entertaining, please consider joining our Patreon community. We've got over 50 people there. I'm very active. I post there every single day. It would be great to see you there. So thank you in advance for your support. Let's go on to our third and final story. Oh, yes. All right, this one's great. All right. It's called My Best Friend and His Girlfriend Invited Me to Partake in a Three-Way with Them. My best friend's girlfriend called me tonight and asked if I'd be down to join them in a three-way. I was so surprised by the question that it took me a moment to register what was asked. I stuttered a yes, I'd love to. Originally, I was going to go over to their place tonight, but it ended up getting too late, so I'm going over tomorrow night. I can't even begin to describe how honored and grateful I am that they invited me over to join them in this. Now, I consider myself moderately experienced when it comes to sex, and I've always been pretty vocal with my closest friends that I'm down to try anything once. I'm actually very explorative. How do you say that word? I'm actually very adventurous. I'll just synonym it up. I'm very adventurous when it comes to sex and trying new things. However, I've never been in a three-way. The opportunity to be in one has never presented itself before. This is exciting. I'm so nervous. We're all going to sit down before any clothes come off to discuss boundaries and what's okay and what's not okay. I'm still curious as to what the proper etiquette is for a three-way, and I'm open to hearing some tips and do's and don'ts before as well. By the way, I am a male. Oh, good. All right. Well, it's nice to end on something lighter. So he wants to have a threesome with his best mate and his mate's girlfriend. All right. Well, why don't we just do a basic pros and cons list? Pros. Well, you get to have sex. That's a pro, you know. If she's hot, you know, then you get to be with a beautiful woman. That's cool, you know. And sex feels nice, you know, so that's good. So I can see that's probably the biggest pro of participating in a threesome. You know, you get to try something new. It's not something that you've done before. So if it's like a bucket list item, or if you're just curious, then yeah, that's a pro. You get to be part of a threesome. What other pros could there be? I'm struggling to think of any. I can think of lots of cons. Let's go into the cons. because there's lots of potential downsides to doing this. This is not a simple situation. I think that going through with this threesome could really complicate your relationship with both of these people. You know, these people are your friends, and you've probably not seen them naked before, but not only are you about to see them naked, and that's not something you can unsee, but you're about to watch them have sex and about to have sex with them. I mean, that's a major step. That's a major change in your relationship. That's going to affect a permanent change in whatever dynamic you have at the moment. So you've got to be ready for that. You know, I would imagine from every interaction that you have with these people afterwards, even if you never have a threesome again, because you did it once, there's always going to be a sexual undertone to it. And I mean, that's a pretty massive change. I would say that's a pretty high price to pay. I think it's typically why, if couples are really interested in exploring a threesome, typically they would reach out to a stranger, you know, a sort of anonymous third party, because they don't want to complicate things with their friends. And if things go really sour, you may regret it, because in a sense, you're kind of sacrificing the friendship in its current state for this experience. And there's lots of other complicating factors too. Like the more I think about it, the more cons there are. Because what about this girl? Like, why does she want to do this? You know, what do we know about her motives? Does she like you? You know, there's all kinds of men in the world, probably lots, that would jump on the ability to have a threesome. So why has she chosen you? That's an interesting question. It's very complicated. It makes me a little bit uneasy that she was the one who called you. You know, where was the friend? You know, why wasn't it a man-to-man kind of thing? Or if she was the one who was confident enough to do the call, then I feel like the friend should have been on the line with her at least. You know, it's a threesome. Why not start the communication with all three people to begin with? So what's her motive? You know, is she the confident one? Is she the one pushing for this threesome? Does she want to cheat on her partner, and this is the sort of way to do it? Does she want to cheat with you specifically? You know, does she have a crush on you? I think that these are really important discussions that need to be had first. And it's good. You're going to sit down and you're going to talk about all these things. I just hope that you do a thorough job, because if there are any feelings involved here, then that is really important, relevant information that needs to be spoken about first. You know, you can't just jump straight into the threesome. So I guess for me, if I was in your situation, which I probably don't think I would find myself in your situation, this is not my kind of thing, but if I was, during that discussion, I would be asking, whose idea is this? You know, who really wants it? Who came up with this plan? Because if it's hers, why? What does she want out of this? You need to know that. And if it's his idea, well, that's also important. Like, why does he want to have a threesome? Like, whose fantasy is this? Is he bisexual? Does he have a crush on you? Like, why has he chosen you to be part of this threesome? I mean, I can understand that most guys might fantasize about having a threesome, but like, it's a pretty common fantasy. But I think in 99% of the time, it's a fantasy involving two girls. You know, it's not a fantasy involving two guys. I personally struggle to see what pleasure there is to have out of that situation. But look, everyone's got their own, you know, sexual kinks or whatever. I'm not shaming you. I personally don't understand it, but you know, you do you. If that's what you want, go for it. But for me, I'm thinking it's all the unpleasantness. If you're in this friend's role, it's all the unpleasantness of getting cheated on, you know, because your partner's having sex with somebody else. Plus, it's extra bad because you have to watch. You actually have to be a witness to the cheating. And while your heart's probably being broken watching your girl have sex with like your best friend, you're meant to be turned on and you're meant to be part of that kind of pleasure. Very, very difficult. So for me personally, like, the way I see it is that whatever pleasure there would be from being with a hot girl and having sex with her, that's going to be cancelled out by having to be with a guy, you know? Like, and it's your friend, you know. Do you really want to see your friend's dick? You know, do you want to watch him have sex and get to know like what his testicles look like, what his orgasm face is? Like, these are really intimate details that you can't unknow after you've seen them. You know, this is going to permanently affect your friendship. Even if you speak everything through, you know, and you have a huge discussion, don't think that it's not going to change your relationship with these people. It's going to permanently change that dynamic. So be aware of the risks going forward. And based on that discussion, I think that there are a couple of things that you could hear that should absolutely preclude you from participating. I think the main one being that if the woman actually has feelings for you, I don't think it's appropriate to continue. I think that they need to have lots of discussions between themselves about why that is and what they want from their relationship. I don't think the threesome's going to make anything better. So if this is coming from a place of she actually likes you, I know this sounds weird, like don't have sex with her if she actually likes you, but I do think that that's the right step to take. But, if you have that discussion, you don't find anything worrying, and if you're personally the kind of guy who likes the idea of a male-male, female threesome, like all of the blocks are in place, yeah, go for it. Have fun, dude. Hopefully you come back to Reddit and let us know how it went. I'm curious to see how it goes. I hope that you enjoy yourself. I am really curious. I don't want to talk any more about this. I'm not sure how much else I have to say, but I really want to hear what people in the comments section say. Let's see. All right, first comment. You and him shouldn't kiss for more than 5 minutes at a time. Yeah. What is a male-male, female threesome? Are the guys ever touching each other? Are they part of it? I think for most straight guys, absolutely not. That's not what's on the agenda. And that Netflix show Love, they spoke about this. They said, well, it's not really a threesome as two kind of simultaneous, like parallel twosomes. That's the way I sort of think about it. The only person it's actually a threesome for is the woman. Next comment. I've been through a few of these. The focus is often the same, to make sure she has the most fun and that her boundaries are respected. I don't really agree with that. I don't think that she should necessarily be the most focused. I think that she's getting the best deal out of all of this. If she's a straight woman, she gets to have sex with two guys. I think that the partner is the person who needs to be, like the male partner, his friend, is the person you need to be most conscious of. Try and find out where he's at and be very conscious of not doing anything to disrespect his boundaries. This person says, don't try and fuck better than him. That's an interesting one. Like, yeah, maybe you need to consciously kind of reduce your studliness in the bedroom, because you don't want to show up your friend and put him to shame. Just hold back. Like if you're really gifted at sex and he's obviously not doing a very good job, maybe just hide some of your God-given talents, just try and not make him feel too bad. That might be the respectful thing to do. Do not do this unless you are prepared to lose your friendship over it. This has the high likelihood of altering your friendship, particularly if their relationship is not stable. Yep, I completely agree. You could be responsible for ending their relationship if this is the thing that tips them over the edge. A lot of people might feel attracted to the idea of a threesome because introducing some novelty into their sex life, maybe that's going to rejuvenate their relationship. Absolutely not the case. If your relationship has gotten to the point where you need a threesome in order to keep things interesting enough so that you want to be together, the relationship is already gone. The two of you just haven't admitted it yet. This person says, don't have a bigger dick than the guy. Yes. How awkward would it be for the friend if you turn up really well hung and he's got a small dick and the girlfriend's just so into you? Like, oh, I cannot imagine why guys would ever enter into this. It's so bizarre to me. Unless you're bisexual, then I can completely understand it. But, oh no. And that's another thing. Do you really want to know what your friend's dick looks like? Do you want to know? Maybe he's bigger than you. Do you want to know that? Like, I'm not saying it's important. Your dick size isn't important. It's really not. Most guys are just average. That's what the research shows. But the fact that that's objectively true doesn't mean that subjectively men aren't constantly freaking out about the size of their cock and how it measures up and whether it's big or average or small or whatever like that. Do you really want to spend the rest of your lifetime being friends with a person who you know intimately what their dick is like? I certainly don't want to know that about my friends. Like, I would happily forego a threesome so that I don't have to find that information out. Oh man, this is fun. I know I usually just do like 4 or 5 comments, but I'm enjoying this. I just want to do a couple more. I think the biggest red flag is that she asked, not his bro. The bro's not in control of the situation. Yeah, I would agree, because I think the threesome's going to be more for her sake. I think that it's more, it's inappropriate that she was the one who made the call. I think that he should have been the one to do that, so that you're sure that he's okay with this, because if he's not, then going through with this could potentially break him. You need to be very careful. Be very mindful / respectful of their relationship. You are the outsider here. Never forget it. Yeah, definitely. Like, what you want, if you're participating, isn't what's important. You need to be respectful of their wishes. And if you don't want to do what they want, try not to negotiate too much. I would say just don't do it. This person says, "You gonna eat his ass." There's a winking smiley face. Gross. This guy says, "Your buddy has a bet with his girl that he can get you to suck his dick. I think he's right." I love it. This guy comes online asking for advice and everyone's just having fun trolling him. That's classic. But I mean, this situation is completely bizarre. Like, when else? Like, suddenly, like, ordinarily, it would be a very homosexual act to have, like, an erect penis and be naked in front of, like, your friend who also has an erect penis is naked. But what? Suddenly, because there's a naked girl there, all the homosexuality, all the undertones of that just go flying out the window? Like, it's okay? Like, you remember that Lonely Island song? It's not gay when it's in a three-way. Oh, that's funny. Oh yes, this comment. This is the winner. Alpha the fuck out of the situation. Declare that her ass is mine and fight your friend if he so much looks at her butthole. Oh, that's so good. Just get in there and just alpha the fuck out of the situation. Like, yeah, her ass is mine. Oh no. This is great. Oh, all right, that's enough. That's enough. All right, that's the end of the podcast. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week. I'm sticking with the week every week schedule. I haven't missed a week so far. Every single Monday there's been a new podcast. I hope I don't miss a week. So yeah, if you come across a fantastic story on Reddit that you want me to cover, that's what happened with this first story. Somebody actually sent that to me and said, "Can you please cover this in your podcast?" I mean, that was fantastic. I really liked that. So if you come across something you want my comment on, that's absolutely fine. Just send it through to me. Or if you have your own personal story that you want to feature on the podcast, just send me an email. Best way to find my email is through my Patreon page. Remember, this podcast is sponsored by Man-Made Media. Please check them out. They've got 2 great videos, one on booty calls, one on the ovulation of strippers. Check it out. Thanks for listening. I will see you again next time.